Have you seen those amazing shot on iPhone commercials or GoPro's $1 million challenge videos and thought to yourself, how do I make my shots look as good with my camera? Well, you can, and I'm gonna show you the 3 cheat codes to achieving the cinematic video look. Hey, my name is Denver Riddle. I'm a colorist, and before that, I was a cinematographer. I've done work for Facebook, Instagram, the US ski team, and more. And from that experience, I picked up 3 cheat codes along the way that you can start using to make your films look more high-end and expensive no matter what gear you're using. So whether you're on a GoPro, a smartphone, or some other camera you've got banging around, here's what to do to get cinematic video. Step number 1, lighting and lens selection. Since this is where everything begins, and although this is a broad and diverse subject, all I'm gonna say is pay attention to the lighting. Avoid harsh lighting from the noonday sun and instead try to shoot closer to golden hour, the time just after sunrise or the time just before sunset. The lighting is softer then, and we get these complementary colors of warm highlights from the direct sunlight and cool shadows from the sky, acting like a large blue bounce cart. Backlighting can also make your subject look ethereal or heavenly with an outlining glow. To make this fully work, you'll need a bounce card or a silver reflector to bounce light back on your subject, but also buildings and structures can also act as a bounce card. If shooting indoors during the day with no lights, avoid shooting the subject against a window and try to use the natural lighting to your advantage. If you do have the budget for lighting, the biggest thing in my opinion is to look for a large softbox, and the larger the diffusion is, the nicer the quality of the light will be with soft shadows. So it really pays to pay attention to the lighting, and I recommend experimenting with different vantage points and staging your subject in different ways so you can see how the light changes and go with what looks the best. In terms of lenses, you may not have many options with a fixed lens, but there are some interesting workarounds for GoPro from companies like Backbone and smartphone lenses from companies like Moment. Changing the focal length or angle of view can present interesting variety to your video. Just keep in mind that the smaller sensor sizes of the GoPro and smartphones means it's more difficult to get that nice shallow depth of field or bokeh where things in the background have that nice blur characteristic of cinematic video. One workaround is to get really close to your subject, but that might not always be practical. And if you are on a DSLR, I recommend a fast zoom lens, meaning it has a low f number. Or if you go with multiple prime lenses, I recommend 24, 50, and 85mm from companies like Sigma that have a nice cost to performance ratio. For what it's worth, 24 is wide angle, 50 is similar to our eyes, and 85 is sometimes referred to as the portrait lens that gets you that nice bokeh characteristic of cinematic video. All right, step number 2, choose the best camera settings. The second cheat code is to get the best quality out of your camera as possible. The best camera settings will give you a neutral, flat-looking image that you can then improve in post with color correction and color grading. Now, I know it may seem uncomfortable for you, but you do need to go with 100% manual control to get the best quality. This means manual exposure and white balance. But with a little bit of practice, it does get easier, and I'll show you how to set this up for your camera. Let's first start with the GoPro. Most people use their GoPro in auto mode. Big mistake. So let's turn on the Pro Tune feature. Pro Tune lets you use your GoPro in manual mode, and the results are much better. For frame rate, I recommend 24 frames per second, the same frame rate most commonly associated with film. Shutter speed, I recommend 1/48, and then adjusting the ISO according to lighting conditions and using an ND filter, sort of like a pair of sunglasses, if you need to knock down the light further to maintain 1/48 shutter speed. For sharpening, you always want to set it to low and color profile at flat for a more neutral looking image, giving us more detail in post. A final great tip is to keep exposure compensation at -1, as this will help keep your highlights from clipping. Next, let's talk about smartphones. The biggest issue with them is the lack of manual control, but there is an app for that, and the most popular, hands down, is Filmic Pro. For many years, it has been the go-to for iPhone users, and recently, it's come to the Android. And to give you an idea of what can be done, award-winning films have been shot with Filmic Pro like Tangerine that premiered at Sundance and won Best Picture at the 2015 Independent Spirit Awards. And it was all shot on an iPhone 5S. So Filmic Pro gives you the manual settings you need, as well as the color profiles of flat and log V2. Now, what if you have a different camera? Maybe you have a Handycam style camera or a DSLR. With these, you should find proper manual controls, so just go for it. If you're shooting with a Canon, most models let you install color profiles, and the one I recommend is CineStyle from Technicolor, which gives you a nice filmic image. And if you're not using a Canon, say you're on a Nikon or some other camera, I suggest that you find the picture profile settings where you can turn the sharpness all the way down and turn down the contrast and saturation as much as possible. I can't recommend enough that you conduct some field tests with these settings so you can develop a look and a workflow that works for you every time and gives you the clean, predictable results that you're looking for. Okay? Now, for our third and final cheat, color grading is where everything comes together. If you followed my advice, your footage should look neutral, flat, and have nice lighting. We can grade the footage manually or convert from log to Rec. 709 using a LUT developed for the color profile that was used. Take, for example, these clips from an iPhone captured with Filmic Pro. Using Cinema Grade, I'm going to quickly add contrast and saturation manually in just a couple of seconds. Using the hotkey C on the keyboard to choose contrast, we'll click and drag to add contrast. Then hit S for saturation and click and drag to add saturation. Alternatively, we can reset this and use a log to Rec. 709 LUT. It is pretty easy to find LUTs for most color profiles with a quick Google search. Then all we need to do is to make sure all these shots match, because no matter if you're using a cheap camera or the baddest 8K RAW recording camera, there will be light changes throughout the day. So you'll need to fix those mismatches in post. For instance, if you're shooting outside from 8 a.m. until noon, there's gonna be a lot of changes to the light, right? Or if you're filming a wedding ceremony and some clouds happen to pass by, you suddenly go from a bright sunny day to a dull cloudy one. But the good news is we can address this issue in post. So I'll jump into the shot matching page to quickly copy and paste the corrections between clips. Because I can compare the shots side by side as well as in the scopes, this makes it super easy to make the necessary changes until they match. Finally, you'll want to add a color grade to your film or a stylized look that gives it a unique vibe or look for your brand. For that, I'll jump into the final grading page and browse to the LUTs until I find a look that I like. Let's take a look at the before and after. That's way better than sticking to the mamby-pamby default settings of the iPhone. Paying attention to the lighting, using manual controls paired with a log or flat picture profile, and putting on a final touch with color grading, you'll be able to get the most cinematic video from your camera. So regardless of the camera you use, by following these steps, you'll be able to get a lot more out of your camera and get the high-end cinema look, which we all want. If you liked the color grading demo here and liked how easy it was to color correct, match, and add the final look, the software I was using is Cinema Grade. Cinema Grade is a color grading software intended for content creators who don't have the luxury of specializing as a colorist, but still want to get the same professional looking results. It's a plugin that lets you bypass 20-year-old controls with on-screen color grading, Lightroom style controls, false color mode for getting the perfect exposure, easy color matching, real-time previews of LUTs, and support for the X-Rite color checker chart for doing automatic corrections. It works directly in your timeline and your editor, whether you're in Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, or Final Cut Pro 10. You'll see a link for Cinema Grade in the description below, and you can get a free 7-day trial. And if you just want to see how to do all these things using the built-in tools in your editor, then I invite you to the free 1-hour online color grading workshop where we dive into the fundamentals and cover the kinds of tips and things you don't normally see on YouTube. We'll have a special offer for our Color Grading Academy at the end of the presentation for those who want to go further in their filmmaking. So check out these options. If we can help you to get the look of your films to stand out and create films that people rave about, we want to see you do that. For more videos like this, click the subscribe button and then the bell to be notified of our next one. I'll see you in the next video.